So I get in the truck and I sit down, and the truck just expanded. My feet were 2 miles away, and then they were back. And I sat there, kind of shook my head for a second, and it happened again.
Yeah.
And I knew I gotten spiked.
Right.
So Owsley had nailed me. And I just sat back and enjoyed the show.
Welcome to Making It with Terry Wollman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Wollman.
Welcome to Making It with me, your host, Terry Wollman. I created this show to focus on what it takes to have a lasting career in the ever-changing landscape of the music business. And today, we have the perfect guest to talk about that. I'm with Al Schmitt.
Hi.
And let me tell you a little bit about Al. And by the way, I'm really excited to say that this is our 100th show. And I'm celebrating by being here at Capitol with Al. Cool. And welcome to the show. And let me tell you a little bit about Al. Al Schmitt is an American award-winning recording engineer, producer, and author. The winner of 20 Grammy Awards, 2 Latin Grammys, and a Trustees Grammy for Lifetime Achievement, Schmitt has helped countless artists garner an astounding 160 gold and platinum records. Recognizing that talent, Al Schmitt was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2015. Fittingly, his star is right in front of the iconic Capitol Records building, where so many of his great hits were recorded and where he continues to record today. Which is the reason why I'm so happy to be here at Capitol Studios with you to celebrate 100 episodes of Making It with my very special guest, Al Schmitt.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome to the show.
Happy to be here.
And just
especially Capitol.
I know. So we're in Studio B at Capitol, and I know you're biased because you've been working here pretty much since it opened.
Pretty much.
They opened in 1956.
Yeah, but I didn't come to California until 58.
Right.
And the first time I actually worked here was 65 on a Michael Franks album.
Which Michael Franks album was that?
I don't remember which one, Sleeping Gypsy or
right.
one of those.
Because you did a few of those. Well, that actually...
I did them all.
Yeah, all of them.
The early ones.
Yeah, and they sounded so great. That would explain why.
Yeah.
It actually leads me to my first question. What do you remember about your very first day at Capitol? So it was a Michael Franks album?
Yeah, it was a Michael Franks album, and I remember my assistant, and I won't mention his name, but he couldn't punch in, and he didn't do anything. I had to yell for him when I needed patches changed or I needed to find him. I had to go off and run up and down the halls to find him, and I had never been at any place like that.
So he was a staff second?
He was a staff
that you inherited?
guy here, and I inherited him, and he's the nicest guy in the world, and we became really good friends.
You did, okay.
But I had to do all the punching and everything else. That's what I remember, how much work and how small the control room was. It's not like A now.
Right.
It was in a corner, small. I think we had, I forget, 8 or 12 inputs, I think. Yeah, it was...
12 inputs, and at that point, was it 4-track or 8-track? What were you recording on?
We were 8-track, 16-track.
Right, up to 16 back then.
Yeah, we were at 16 then, I think. And then, of course, we went to 24.
Right. Speaking of that, technology, resist or embrace? Have you always embraced technology, or did you like to?
Yeah, I embraced it pretty much. It took me a while to get into the digital domain. But once we got to 96K, I was pretty cool.
You were
with
happy,
it. Yeah,
right?
I was happy with
Again.
it. And now we do everything at 192, just about whenever we can. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Does it make you crazy that everything gets dithered down to MP3s when we spend so much time perfecting the craft and the art of
to
audio?
Answer that, yes, it does make me crazy.
Yeah.
And that's why I like to do panels, and hopefully we're going to get more high-res audio out there, and the record companies seem to be wanting to go in that direction, so I'm just hoping that that it will happen and we'll get better sound. I always tell people when I play it back in the control room, this is as good as it's ever going to sound to you. So enjoy this.
Right. Enjoy every moment of
Yeah.
this. By the way, I neglected to thank Capitol and Paula Salvatore for
yeah.
inviting us here
Yeah.
today.
Paula is my studio wife.
Yeah.
That's what my wife calls her.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
She really
is amazing, and the way she handles things, and she handles. She's got my schedule pretty much, and
Yeah.
you know she books me and
Yeah.
stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I imagine there's certain days you spend more time with your studio wife than your
Yeah.
your legal
I
wife.
definitely spend more time with Steve Jenowick,
Right.
who's my assistant most
Right.
of the time,
Right.
than we do at home. But it's cool. I love being here. It's like a second home. Everybody's cool. I love everybody. The security people are
Right.
great. You know, it's like a family.
Yeah. Well, I would hope so for the
Yeah.
amount of years that so many of us have worked here.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, Paula goes way back. You certainly go back.
Yeah.
A lot of history in this room. And do you feel the same way that I do? Like, do you feel the magic in this studio when you walk through the hallways, or when you put the same mic out that you recorded Frank Sinatra with, and
Absolutely.
you put it in front of somebody
yeah.
new? And
When I come walking down the hall, it starts.
I do too.
I just feel it because you're looking at all those portraits and stuff, and it's just an excitement that
Yeah.
happens. And then to walk in and you know, sit down at the console and you know you're going to have a great band out
Yeah,
there.
always.
It's
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always tell people, if you don't really love this, do something else, you know. And, you know, I lie to my wife every day when I tell her I'm going to work, you know, because it's just not work to me.
Right. What else do you think you might possibly do? I mean, if you didn't do this, because
Well-
you've been doing this since you were a kid with your Uncle
Yeah,
Harry.
yeah, I started going to the studio when I was 8 years old. I think, I don't know, I love reading, and I love authors. Elmo Leonard was one of my favorites, and I always thought, well, it'd be nice to be another Elmo Leonard if, you know, Get Shorty and all those great books
Yeah.
that he wrote. But I really never, from the time I was 8, 9 years old, all I wanted to do was be like my Uncle Harry, a recording engineer of some prominence, and make my living like that.
Did your mom and dad also have an affinity or love for music, or was it mostly your Uncle Harry and you just connected with that?
Yeah, it was mostly my Uncle Harry.
Yeah.
My mom and dad, they love music, but the kind of music they liked were like Guy Lombardo and the Three Sons, and I was a bebopper
Right.
and big bands
Yeah.
and jazz, and I'd get to see my uncle record some of the big bands and things, and that's what excited me. That's what got, as I got older and I got hair on my arms, the hair stood up. Yeah, yeah. They never discouraged me. My mom wanted me to be an electrical engineer. I think her father, my grandfather, who passed away when I was 5, I think he was an electrical engineer also, and she wanted me to be like him. But I was afraid of electricity as a kid, so, you know, I didn't want to get shocked.
That's
or
not a
any
bad
of
thing
that.
to be
Yeah,
afraid of.
Right, exactly. So that was definitely out of the question. And going every weekend to my uncle's studio and meeting all the celebrities and everybody was so nice to me and kind, and he was you know, he was so well known. He knew all the great restaurants, and he took me to the fights at Madison Square Garden and the hockey games and all these things that my parents couldn't afford.
Right.
Best restaurants and stuff. And
What did your mom and dad do?
my mother was a housewife, and it was my sister and I when we were young. And then when I was 10, I think my brother Richie was born, and then 6 years after that, another brother, my brother Russell. My father worked during the war years, worked at the Brooklyn Navy Yard building PT boats.
Wow.
But before that,
Yeah.
he worked in the printing business, and he wasn't making a lot of money. He was working 6 days a week for a small amount of money.
Right.
And so we were pretty poor, you
Yeah.
know. Most of my clothes were hand-me-downs from nephews and
Right.
stuff.
Or
So-
neighbors. That was
Yeah,
how it went back in the
absolutely,
day in
yeah.
Brooklyn and the
Well,
New
Brooklyn, yeah,
York and-
every
My dad was from
every
Brooklyn.
woman on the block was my mother.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
You couldn't do anything wrong.
That kind of wasn't a bad
Yeah, it was
setup,
a great
right?
thing. It was
Yeah.
a great thing. I can't tell you how many times I got a smack on the ass from somebody else's mother.
Right.
And
And then a second one when you got home.
Yeah, right, exactly. And so yeah, there was you know, we were poor, we didn't know it. You know, it's that kind
Yeah.
of thing. I thought everybody was like that.
Yeah.
Except my uncle.
Right.
So it's cool.
So your uncle, because he was really your first major mentor and kind of set the destination of your life, were you learning how to plug things, mics in back then, or were you just sit down and be
Yeah.
quiet and watch?
No, I was quiet and watched mostly, but I would clean patch cords. Back in those days, they were the big double patch cords, you
Right.
know, and you had there was a paste you put on them and cleaned them
Yeah.
to make sure the contact was good. And I would set up chairs in the studio,
Mm-hmm.
and he would tell me to go out and tell the musicians to take their shoes off because he was hearing the foot tapping, you
Right.
know, so I'd have to do that. So, you know, I got involved, and they were cutting everything on acetate.
Right.
There was no tape machines back then, and they didn't have suction, so
Right.
they had a mink brush that went across the cutting, and the chip would pile up there, and I would have to take it and put it in a metal can because it was very highly flammable.
Right. So
And,
good to give it to a little
I
8-year-old
thi-
kid if it's
yeah, right.
highly
So I
flammable.
would be up on a little stool and pulling that off. And so he kept me involved.
Yeah.
And you know, he had so many friends. Bing Crosby was a friend, and I'd get to see him a lot and talk to him. The Andrews sisters would come by. Orson Welles was another friend. Art Tatum
Yeah.
would come down from upstairs. He had an office
Same building.
in the same building. Would come down, and he would take my hand and show me little boogie woogie licks on the piano. You know,
Was piano your instrument? Did you ever really pursue
no,
playing
drums
anything?
was what I wanted, but I was never good enough to make a living
Right.
at it, so I stayed away from it.
Do you have a drum kit at home still, or no?
I do.
Good. Good.
Yeah, I got. It's actually one of my kids that Jeff Beccaro gave to my
Oh,
son,
sweet.
and
Yeah.
yeah, it's at the house.
Speaking of, you have 5 kids,
5,
Right.
4 boys and a girl.
and then grandchildren are aplenty.
Yeah, 8 of them.
8.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty wonderful.
Grandsons. Yeah, it is. It's great.
You know, so
Family Christmas Eves and things. You know, everybody gets together. It's really cool.
you know, one of the things that I appreciate about you is, besides this really remarkable and fascinating career that you've had, and I would guess that you would agree that it's been pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
You know, you still have managed to have a good life along the way. And I'm wondering, you know, as far as creating a beautiful family, staying healthy, physically, mentally, emotionally. Can you talk about that? Like, were you always, you know, making sure you had time for family or for exercise or eating well, or did that come later?
That came later, I think. You know, when I was busy working, and I was working all the time. You know, I was working 60, 70 hours a week at RCA. So, yeah, I would see the kids on weekends and things like that, Sunday in particular. Yeah, I always tried to eat well.
You did?
I was always pretty picky about how I ate, and I did a lot of exercising. I love to play sports, softball, baseball, or whatever, and that kind of stuff. So I did a lot of that on weekends when I wasn't working. I'd be out on a baseball field playing ball, and so yeah, you know, as I got into it more, drugs started to happen. I was producing the Jefferson Airplane, and
Yeah.
then there was acid was around, and,
Right.
and cocaine, and nitrous oxide tanks.
Oh, I remember those. Yeah.
And somebody
Yeah.
just rolling joints all
Right.
the time, and Owsley with his acid
Sure.
would come by. So a lot of that went on, and
Yeah.
it started to affect me and
Mm-hmm.
affect my relationship at home. Caused me to get a divorce, and it's a sad time of my life when I look back on it. But everybody was doing it. That doesn't make it right.
Right.
But the fact that everybody was doing it, you couldn't get away from it. You seemed to be, if you weren't part of the team,
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So everybody was passing around their Coke bottle and everything else. And then after, I never drank at work, but after work, out to the bars, and
Right.
we'd all be hanging out. And,
Yeah, just to have the camaraderie,
Right.
or just to transition from this
Yeah.
incredibly high experience, even without drugs.
Right.
Making music
Yeah.
is very intimate and very mind altering.
Yeah. Yeah, and
In a
my
good
mind
way.
was altered a lot.
Well, especially, I mean, you're talking
Yeah.
about, like, again, you produced the Jefferson Starship record.
Listen, I was doing, I was getting ready to do the first Hot Tuna album, the acoustic one.
Yeah.
And we were doing it, it was live in Berkeley. And we had Wally Hyder's truck, and I was producing, so my engineer was a guy by the name of Alan Zentz. And we're getting ready to do the show, and I'm at the bar with Owsley, and I'm drinking apple juice.
And Owsley was one of the inventors of LSD.
Yeah, he broke down the
He
formula.
and Timothy Leary.
Yeah, he broke down the formula. So anyway, I finished. Owsley was doing the front of the house, so I get in the truck and I sit down, and I got a pad and a pencil, and I'm going to make notes and everything else, and the truck just expanded. My feet were 2 miles away, and then they were back. And I sat there, kind of shook my head for a second, and it happened again.
Yeah.
And I knew I gotten spiked.
Right.
So Owsley had nailed me in my,
Without your knowledge.
of course.
Which was kind of
They did that
happened a
all
fair
the-
amount. Yeah.
Did that all the time.
Read the electric Kool-Aid acid
Yeah.
test if you
So
want
I
to know what we're
turned to
talking
Alan
about.
Zentz and I said, Alan, you're on your own.
Right.
And I just sat back and enjoyed the show,
Well, that's kind of good that you actually didn't go into a panic.
No, I knew what it
embraced-
was because I had taken acid before.
Right.
But I knew what it was. But when I had taken it before is because I knew I was taking it.
That's right. It was a
Not the first time I was ever spiked and last.
Yeah.
Because I never, if I opened something and I took my eyes off it, I threw it away.
Right.
I was really cautious about that.
that's still not a bad
they
idea.
thought
to
that
do.
was
Kind of fun.
yeah, people thought that was fun.
Yeah.
And it was just a weird time
Yeah.
in the business. And so I wound up having a bad night one night with a bunch of guys and realized that I had a problem. So I called a friend of mine who was in AA. And I said, I think I could use some help. And I said, can you tell me where the meetings are so I'll maybe come by and go to a meeting? He said, Al, I'll come and get you.
Oh.
He wouldn't let me go on my own
Yeah.
because he was afraid I'd back out or something.
Sure.
So he came
Yeah.
and got me and pulled me into an AA meeting, and I've been sober ever since.
What year was that?
That was 1988.
That's something to really be proud of.
I'm very proud of it
Yeah.
because I was 3 years sober and I met my future wife, and we dated for a couple of years and got married. We've been married now 26 years, coming up to 27. Best years of my life.
Right.
And I started doing Pilates and working out.
And meditating.
And meditation. Paul Horn got me into meditation. And
Yeah.
actually,
Me too, by the way. I used to meditate with Paul. He was one of the first people I met when I came to LA in
yeah, I
1981.
was producing all his records.
Right, no.
And so what happened was
He loved you, by the way.
Yeah, I know. And I was doing a Jefferson Airplane, and I was doing Eddie Fisher in the afternoon, 2 to 5,
Right.
and Jefferson Airplane. And that's, you know,
Extreme.
you want to doesn't get any further apart than that. And so I would go at 5 o'clock, I'd go up to my office, close the door, and meditate.
Yeah.
I'd sit there and meditate for an hour or so. And it gave me the energy and peacefulness to be able to go down and deal with the Jefferson Airplane.
Did
Now-
you go to India with Paul?
Yes, I did.
So
I
you
recorded
actually.
in the in the Taj Mahal.
So Paul told me that story, years ago, and said that you guys kind of managed to sort of stay, once they closed and
At night, yeah.
At night, like
they let us in at night. Actually, that was the only time we could record.
Okay.
And the Army would come with us and stay outside, so no one would come in.
And there was a natural 26 or 28 second reverb.
It was like, well, this is a great story.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like an echo plane.
Yeah.
So we had to wait. Taj Mahal is open up at the top, and pigeons would come in and nest up there. So we'd have to wait until the cooing
Right.
stopped down, slow down. That would take a while, nighttime, or we could hear an airplane if it went over
Sure.
ahead. So we'd have to watch out for that. And then we started recording. And in the middle of the recording, we'd hear splat, bop, 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 bop. It would be pigeon shit.
Yeah.
And then we'd have to wait until that stopped, and then we'd start again, So so it took a while. We were only supposed to be there one day. We wound up being there 2 days, and part of it was because of the pigeons.
The pigeon shit.
Yeah.
That was a sort of a game changer album too, because it became known as the first New Age album.
Yeah.
And you guys, and Paul was a jazz, musician.
Yeah, I
beautiful
signed him
tone.
to RCA.
You did?
When I was producing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How and why did you make the transition from engineering to producing and then back again?
Well, what had happened was, I was on call all the time. People were calling and wanted me to do dates at RCA.
As a staff engineer?
As a staff engineer.
And by the way, was that a weekly salary or was that?
Yeah, I made salary plus overtime. I was
Okay.
averaging almost $47,000 a year back then
then.
with all my overtime. I was working 6 days a week, and I'd start at 9 in the morning
Right.
and go to midnight.
And you didn't need to negotiate for yourself because it was a set rate?
Yeah, I did. There was none of that. So, and people were asking for me all the time.
Right.
And I would get producers that would come in, and they'd be on the phone for a whole 3-hour session.
Right.
And I'd be doing everything, and they'd be talking to their bookie or hookers or whatever. And I realized that these guys are getting all the credit and making all the money.
And you're the one
I'm
who's really
doing a lot
making
of
it
this
happen.
work.
Yeah.
And the musicians knew too. We'd have the honor system. You made a mistake, raise your hand.
I've always done that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Call it out.
Yeah, exactly. So that was going on. Then Bill Putnam, who owned United Recording, he was getting ready to slow down recording, and he offered me a job. And so I went to talk to my boss, Steve Scholes. Now, Steve was the guy that signed Elvis to RCA, nicest guy in the world. So, and I said to him, look, I want to get promoted to the production staff. And if you can't do that, I'm going to leave because I got offered a better job with Bill Putnam. So he said, okay, but you have to find somebody to do the Henry Mancini dates. And so I had a friend that worked at Radio Recorders, and who was a really good engineer, but they weren't using him a lot. So I convinced him to come over to RCA. He did, and then I stayed with him on the first few Mancini dates,
Right.
show him how we set up and what we did, and then they promoted
Transition.
me.
Yeah.
So then I wound up making less money as a producer.
Yeah. What
and
a
I
surprise.
was doing 11 artists.
And these were a lot of name artists too.
They were name artists, yeah. Back then, I was doing Limelighters. I was doing Sam Cooke,
Right.
Jefferson Airplane, Hugo Montenegro,
Yeah.
a lot of female artists, the group called the Women Folk,
Right.
Women Folk Group. And so I was working more hours.
Even like Big Mama Thornton. Did you
Big
produce
Mama
her
Thornton, but
as
that
well?
was
Or that was later.
That was later. After
Okay.
I left, I started a record company with Steve Douglas, and we signed her, and that's another story.
I'm sure.
Yeah, right. And I was working my butt off. And Eddie Fisher, they re-signed Eddie and gave him to me. And I loved Eddie, but he was like a 16-year-old kid. And, he had no sense of time. So I have to hire his piano player to stand in front of him and count him in and point to him when he had to. Yeah, so it was, and then I was overdubbing him from 2 to 5, and then I'd go upstairs, meditate, and come down and do the airplane.
Right.
And we'd be functional from maybe 8 to 11, and then all the celebrities would start showing up,
Along with the drugs and the alcohol.
drugs and everything,
Yeah.
and David Crosby would hang out, and Mama Cass, and you name it, everybody. And I wasn't hardly getting much sleep.
Because you'd work till 3 or 4 in the morning?
We'd actually, the productive end would end about 11 o'clock at night.
Right.
And because that's when everybody started coming, and that's when it became a social party.
Right.
Everybody would show up. Actors, people, there were a lot of drugs. And,
Right.
and I would try to grab somebody to do a guitar part. Or
Right. To
Grace
keep it
was
moving.
always
Right.
willing to do something, so I was always able to get her in. But I called my boss on the phone, Ernie Alschuler, and I said, Ernie, you got to get somebody to do this. I said, I'm killing myself. I've got 11 artists. I got to find songs for a lot of them because they didn't all write material.
Right.
So I had to see publishers. I had to hire arrangers.
Right.
I had to hire a contractor, to contract the musicians and do all this.
Were
And
you hands-on even in choosing musicians, or would you defer
Oh, yeah,
to,
no.
like you knew which
yes,
drummers and guitar
absolutely.
players you wanted?
I knew the guys I wanted
Yeah.
and all. And most of the time I'd leave it up to the arranger because I wanted him to be comfortable with who he had.
That's a smart producer.
Yeah. And so I said, I'm getting 3-4 hours sleep a night, and I'm
Right.
and his line to me was, gee, Al, truck drivers do it. So I said, really, Ernie? I said, get yourself a couple of truck drivers. I quit. And I turned my
Good.
notice in. I gave him 2 weeks' notice in the morning, and I left. I was home for about 2 weeks. I had no idea what I was going to do.
Right.
And I get a call from the manager at the Jefferson
And you
Airplane.
already had kids at this point?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You were in it.
I was deep in it.
Yeah.
So he called me on the phone and said, they're trying to give us people over there, and they're all old farts, and there's nobody we want to work with. And so they finally said, okay, hire whoever you want. We'll give them points and money. And are you interested? And I said, you bet.
Yeah.
So back then I was making $17,500 a year as a producer, and I could make a $5,000 bonus, which I did every year because I had enough artists that sold
Right.
enough records. My first royalty check after Bathing at Baxter's was $50,000 working on one artist. It took 5.5 months to do the record.
Right.
But
It paid off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I realized, well, I did the right thing.
Yeah.
So then I started independently doing people, and one of my dearest friends, Tommy LaPuma, was doing an album, and Bruce Botnick was the engineer, the guy that did all the Doors records.
Right.
And he had to leave because he had a commitment to start the Doors record. And Tommy said, Al, you used to engineer. Would you finish the record for me? And I said, oh, Tommy, I haven't done any engineering in 6 years. I don't know if I could even do it.
Do you feel like you forgot how?
I wasn't sure whether
Yeah.
I could do it, really.
It's kind of funny to hear you say
yeah,
that.
I know. And he said, Al, it's like riding a bike.
Yeah, that's what I'm
That's
thinking.
exactly what he
Yeah.
said. I said, all right, I'll give it a try. If I'm not happy, you let me back out. And if you're not happy,
You
no,
tell me. Right.
great.
We're still good.
So I got into this album, and I started mixing, recording and mixing this record. And I thought, man, this is what I really want to do.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I really enjoy doing. It was Alone Together, a Dave Mason album.
Yeah.
Great sounding record.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I started doing that. Joe Wizard, who had just signed Earth, Wind and Fire to Columbia Records, asked me, I did their first 2 albums, Engineering, and that was cool.
That was before they had the Complex, their own studio. Too,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. There was a woman in the group, the first
I forgot
album.
that.
Yeah. So so I started doing that, and then I got a call from Neil Young to co-produce and engineer On the Beach with him, and I did that. And then I got a call from Jackson Brown. He was working with a guy, and they were having trouble getting a mix on the record. Asked me if I would come and do it, and that was for Every Man.
Right.
And so
That's
I
a
mixed that
pivotal
record.
album.
Yeah, mixed that record, and then he liked what happened there, and he said, would you do the next record with me? You co-produce it. So that was late for the Sky.
Yeah.
So I did that.
When you're producing or co-produce or moved
Yeah.
into co-producing with other artists, did you bring in other engineers as well, or were you kind of doing
No,
both?
I would engineer.
You'd engineer
Yeah,
and
yeah.
be involved in
yeah,
every aspect, the
yeah,
creative aspect.
exactly.
Okay.
So I really started loving engineering so much. I just didn't want the aggravation of producing anymore. I
Right.
just wanted to do my thing,
Yeah.
capture the sounds,
Right.
and do the best I could, and that was it.
One of the things that I've always felt from you, anytime that we just run into each other over the
Yeah.
years, is that you really do love engineering
Oh, absolutely.
and music.
I love music, again, from the time I was a little kid.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first record I bought was a Jimmy Lunceford album, a big band album
Right.
when I was 11. So yeah, I love music, and I love being around musicians.
Yeah.
I love musicians.
Yeah, me
I
too.
love to. I get to be friendly with all of them. I get to go and hang out with them.
Yeah.
I go in the studio and we chat about family and
Right.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they all know that I'm really concerned about getting the best out of them and their sound. So they know I'm on their side.
Right.
And we work as a team all the
Yeah.
time. And I talk to engineers who, when you're doing an orchestral date or something, and you become really friendly with the conductor
Yeah.
or the orchestrator there, because there'll be times like at Bar 34, the French horns are overwhelming coming to. You could talk to him and say, look, in Bar 34, can you bring the French horns down a little? And he'll work with you. Or
Right.
bring the cello up here at Bar
Right.
60. I need a little more of that. And that was it. It's a team
That's
kind of
that's
thing.
the beautiful part of the collaboration. So you're not even thinking like I'm going to need to bring that fader down. You are already connected with the
Exactly.
music, the process,
I
the
want it to happen
performance.
naturally.
That's right.
So, yeah, so that was,
But you have the vocabulary and the integrity or the desire.
well, I've done it
do-
all too, so
Right.
that
Yeah.
was a big help, And there were times when I would be working with a producer, maybe his first record production or
Yeah.
something, and I'd be able to help him along and guide him over certain things. And so that was pretty cool.
Which I would imagine that they were appreciative of.
Yeah.
So indulge me for a second, because you worked on a record that really changed the course of my life as far as falling in love with Brazilian music and also with orchestral music, and it was the Shy Oberto
Yeah.
Amoroso. And so can you share any stories about that, and with Klaus
I
Overman
can
as the
tell you
orchestrator?
exactly how that came about. We were in New York, Tommy LaPuma and I and Klaus, And we went to Joel's apartment and talked about the album.
Yeah.
We went to a studio called Rosebud Studios in New York, a little tiny little place. And we had Grady Tate, great drummer,
Yeah.
and Joel. And I had a mic on, and Grady just played on his thighs, kept time. So now we had that. Klaus was there making
Right.
sure everything was
Right.
cool. Then we came to L.A., and we had Joe Carrero play drums on it, and Jim Hungate, the bass player, played bass on it. So now we had drums and bass and Joao playing guitar, and his time was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Then-
And then his vocals just are
Yeah.
luxuriously floating
Yes.
over that. This is one of the most romantic and
Yeah.
passionate records I had ever heard.
Yeah,
And
and then
it-
of course Klaus, who was right from the beginning,
Yeah.
and making sure all the chords were right and all, then did this incredible orchestration.
Yeah.
And that was the record. I did a follow-up.
Was that all recorded together, the orchestrations, or was that an overdub?
The orchestration.
Did they play with the rhythm section?
Onto the basic that we had.
Okay.
Bass, drums, guitar, and vocal.
Right.
And that was it. And then the orchestration on top of that.
Because it has such an intimacy,
Yeah.
and then there's this, and then it's really rich and
Right.
full. It's got
Now,
everything.
do you know Rosa Passos?
No.
She's an amazing Brazilian singer. And I did an Amoroso album with her.
You did.
That George Calandrelli did the arrangements on. Check that out.
Okay.
Bob. That is really a killer,
Okay.
too. It's really beautiful record.
So was that your first Brazilian experience?
I'm not sure if it was or not. I think I did a bossa nova before that.
There was just something different
Yeah.
about this. Like, of course, I know who Jobim was, and had
Right.
listened to, so it's like
Yeah.
I knew bossa, but then I don't know,
Yeah.
this one just really
Yeah,
showed.
no, it was great. And Joao he was quirky little guy,
Yeah.
but great singer, great player.
Uh-huh.
Time was impeccable.
Yeah.
Songwriter, he did it all.
So let's lead to this new passion of yours, which is writing. You're an author now. I want to show everybody this fantastic book that has already sold out. It's on its
Yeah,
third.
it's on its third printing.
It's on
right
its third
now.
printing already.
Yeah,
And it's Al Schmitt on the record, the magic behind the music.
yeah. It's beyond my wildest dreams of what it's done so far. And
So-
what happened was everybody kept saying to me, we'd sit around at the end of a session. Phil Ramone would be the producer and me, and we'd start telling stories. And the next thing you know, we'd have 15 people sitting. We'd be there 2 hours after the session.
Just-
So he'd tell a story,
Right,
I'd tell a
right.
story, and it was, and people, to both of us, you guys got to write a book, And then I kept getting that all the time.
Yeah.
And Maureen Droney, who co-wrote the book with me, she came and said, I'm getting people telling me, you got to write a book, Al, and what do you think? And finally, I said, okay, well, let's give it a try. And so she would come over on a Saturday to my home and put the tape machine on, and we'd talk.
You would, like we're doing here, you would
Exactly
talk.
what we're doing
Okay.
here. She'd bring up something. I'd tell a story about it and so forth, and it went on. And we did that for 3 years.
Okay.
And this is the culmination of 3 years' work. So it's a fun book. It's an easy book to read. A lot of good stories in it.
Yeah.
And, it's just, especially how I started. And my first big recording session with the Duke Ellington Orchestra.
Yeah.
As a 19-year-old kid.
Well, and you would just come out of the service too,
I
right?
just came out of the service. I was in the Navy.
We're for 2 years?
Yeah, I was in the Navy, and I got out, and I was 19. And my uncle got me a job at another studio. A friend of his had
So
a
there
studio.
is such a thing called nepotism.
Yeah, exactly. And I knew
Which
I was
was a
going to
good
get the job, although I had to go in and interview for it. But the guy was my uncle's best friend,
Yeah.
And so I got the job, and I meet the guy that's going to be my mentor, Tom Dowd.
Yeah.
probably the best engineer who ever lived. The guy was genius, and I'm learning from him every day.
Right.
More. He bought me a notebook, and I do setups and everything else. So I was there about 3 months, and they thought I was capable enough to come in on Saturday and do these little demos. And the demos would be a guy come in, play guitar and sing happy birthday to his daughter. I'd cut the disc, give it to him. He'd give me $15.
Right.
And then another guy came in and played piano and sang a song he had just written. I'd cut the disc, give him that. So this was my first Saturday. And that's what happened. The first two guys, one at 10, one at 12, and now I'm waiting for Mr. Mercer to show up at 2 o'clock.
Right.
And the elevator doors open up, and all these musicians start walking out. And where's the studio? And I said, the studio's right there, but what's this?
Yeah.
Well, we're here for the recording session. Well, I'm looking, and I'm seeing faces that I recognize, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, well, the studio's right there. But, yeah, Mercer Ellington, Duke Ellington's son. They were here from Mercer Records. It's a
Nobody told you.
So nobody told me, and they didn't know. Who booked it didn't know.
Oh, yeah.
So they thought it was another demo.
Yeah.
So I tried to reach Tommy.
Right.
I couldn't. Tried to reach my boss.
Right. No
I
cell
couldn't.
phones, no pagers. Come
No,
on.
couldn't reach anybody.
Yeah.
I got the notebook, the magic notebook.
Yeah.
Go and I find a big band setup that Tommy had done.
Right.
We only had 8 inputs,
Uh-huh.
so I only had to put up 8 mics.
Right.
Got the chairs set up and everything as quickly as I could. And Duke Ellington walks in. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at this guy, and one of my heroes, you
Right.
know. It's like Babe Ruth and Joe DiMaggio
Yeah.
all in one.
Yeah.
And I said, Mr. Ellington, there's a huge mistake. I'm not qualified to do this, you know. I said, they thought it was just a little demo, and I'm just...
Right.
And he looked down, he said, well, sure, studio looks good, musicians comfortable. And I said, yeah, but I've never done anything like this. He said, don't worry, son, we'll get through it.
How sweet.
So, oh man, I'm telling you,
Yeah.
God bless him.
Yeah.
Well, there was a twofold purpose here. Number one, if I fainted, everybody would have had to go home and nothing would have gotten done.
Right, you had
and
to pull
I looked
up.
like I was getting ready to faint.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Oh, right.
I probably turned Snow White.
Sure.
And was
Yeah.
trembling.
Right.
And he was so cool, and band started and started doing my little mixing thing, rotary faders back then.
Right.
We did 3 hours. We did 4 songs, and it was done.
And you discovered that you actually knew more than you thought you knew.
Well, absolutely. I knew more because of watching my uncle
Right.
as a child.
Yeah.
That was embedded in me. And then Tommy, who I jumped in his back pocket.
Yeah.
And everything he did. So I was imitating those two guys.
And a lot of what they did and what you still do is, you know, you're just talking about these drawings and chair placements, but that's everything.
Yeah.
The placement and how close to the mic or how far or close to each other or where in the room, like you had learned intuitively from,
Yeah.
as you said, being in
The
Tommy's
setup
back
is probably
pocket.
one of the most important things that you do when you're setting up the studio.
Okay.
Learning how to, you know, so you get so much separation
Right.
and, you know, not too much,
Yeah.
but, and that's really important, how you set up and how the musicians, no earphones back then.
Right.
No, so everybody had to hear one another. So, you know, everybody was close. So, yeah, that was a big part of it.
So even the early Sinatra albums, no earphones or Duke Ellington.
No.
Everybody's playing.
No
And
earphones.
and you'd walk out in the room and just kind of put your ear to
Yeah,
each
yeah,
section
yeah.
and
When I started doing, you know, a lot of the jazz records, Jerry Mulligan and
Sonny Rollins, Miles
yeah,
Davis.
yeah, Chet Baker and those guys.
Right.
It was all about how well they could hear and
Right.
all. And so yeah, they had to be comfortable. It was the same with Neil Young on the Beach. Everybody was
Right.
sitting around. We had the studio set up like a living room. and lights down. We had lamps, you know, and really over at Sunset Sound
Yeah.
in Studio One. But I forget the guy that was playing some of the solos, but every time it would come to a solo, he'd push the mic away because it was in his way. and I'd have to stop him and go out there and say, don't touch the mic.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was cool. And then another funny story with that is people would come by all the time and want to hear what we were doing, people from the record company and so forth. And we'd have to take the multi-track tape off, put another multi-track tape on that had cuts and play that and everything else. And finally, we decided, wait, let's make some roughs.
Right.
And then on a 2-track, and we could just play that back for everybody. So we just quickly made roughs.
Right.
When it was over, we finished the album, and I said, okay, Neil, when do we start mixing? And he said, we're not going to mix, Al. I said, what do you mean? He said, I love these roughs.
I love the way it sounds.
I love the way they sound. I said, oh, no.
Yeah,
no,
that's
no.
just a...
And I said, don't look, Neil. I'll pay for the studio myself. You got to let me
Right.
remix it. No, that's it. You can remix them, Al, but this is
I'm
what
not
I'm
going to be putting
use.
it out.
So that was it.
And you're still working together.
Oh, yeah, no,
Yeah.
Neil and I are really good friends,
Right.
and I love Neil. I just got done last year. I worked with him with a 100-piece orchestra at Sony Scoring
You
Stage.
did.
It
Fantastic.
was wonderful. I love Neil. He's
Yeah.
a great guy. But he'll see friends of mine and everything, and somebody will say, you know, Al, say hello or whatever, and he'll say, ask Al if he still wants a remix on the beach. And it's a running joke
Right.
now for 30 years, you know, so.
And listening back to that record, do you cringe or are you pretty
Oh,
happy
yeah,
with it?
no. If I could remix it today,
Yeah.
I would. Yeah.
Ask him to send the masters down.
Yeah, no. He won't. It would. I could do it for myself.
Right.
But that was it.
Yeah.
Not going to change that.
What inspires you in music and also what inspires you in life?
Wow, in music, great musicianship. You know, when you hear somebody who is the very best guitar player in the world, you know, or certainly in the top 10,
Yeah.
that inspires me.
Right.
Yasha Heifetz,
Yeah.
you know, the classical people, Rubinstein on piano.
Joe Sample even, who you worked
Joe
with.
Sample, who was one of my all-time favorites
Yeah, me
to
too.
work with. I love Joe.
Joe was my mentor
Yeah.
when I moved out
and,
here. Yeah.
you know, musicians in a band.
Yes.
You know, lead trumpet player, you know, guys, that inspires me because
Mm-hmm.
these guys spend their whole life learning to do what they do as well as they can.
Right.
And for me to have the honor to be able to capture that, doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah.
Really. That's what inspires me. What inspires me in life is, you know, my father taught me to treat everybody the way you would like to be treated. And it was a big thing. My father, back in those days, would tip his hat when he walked by a woman, you know, and on the street he opened the door,
Yeah.
you know, for women. And, you know, he was a good, polite human being. And my uncle was the same kind of guy. So that and the fact that I am such an animal lover.
Yeah, I wanted to talk to you about that.
We just adopted a blind and deaf 11-year-old dog
Man,
that was going to be put down.
Yeah. That's love.
We keep doing that. We now have 3 dogs and a cat. Last year we had more. We lost 3 dogs to old age.
Yeah.
One we got at 9 who was. They had shoved a pipe down his throat to debark him, scars all over his body. He was,
Yeah.
And we got him when
And
he
you
was
rescued
9,
him.
and we kept him for 9 years and gave him 9 wonderful, wonderful years.
Yeah, it sounds like these sweet pets of yours died of happiness.
Yeah,
in your home.
no, absolutely. And so we went 20 years ago. Lisa and I went to with my son, who was 17, 18 at the time. Nick went to Africa on a safari.
That was your first time to Africa,
First time
right?
in Africa, and it was a tented safari, and it was just amazing. It changed my life.
What's a tented
Totally.
safari?
You're in tents,
Okay.
and you stay in one place for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Then they pick up the tents, and while they're driving, you go to a lodge for a night,
Right.
and then you move to another
Oh,
area.
so the animals come to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to places where there are different
sure.
animals.
Yeah.
So
But that was kind of a life changer for you, that
it
first
changed
safari.
my life to watch. I mean, to see the animals living together in perfect harmony. You know, lions living with giraffes and zebras,
Right.
and learning how the animals live. Like when there's some sort of migration, the zebras always walk behind the giraffes.
I didn't
And
know
the
that.
reason being, the giraffe's head is way up here and can see
Yeah, they're the
any
scouts.
danger out
Right.
there. It's things like that, and how they,
So it's very symbiotic.
yeah.
Well, like you said, not even just the animals, the zebras and the giraffes watching out for each other, but like you said, the lions are right over
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
And everybody's fine until it's time for dinner.
When the lions eat, they'll pick off an old gazelle or a young one or whatever. But,
Right.
And once they eat, lions sleep for like 20 hours.
Right.
So they're just laying around. And the other one, I was walking through them and by them, and you see this and you think, my God, this is unbelievable. You'd think everybody be afraid of the lion.
Right.
It's not that way.
So you've been back twice since then, correct?
So we went back 2 years ago, and then we went back last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to go again in 2020. We're planning on that now.
And how long do you go for?
2 weeks we went the last time. This time I think we'll go for about 10 days.
And what about work? I mean, is it easy to plan that far ahead at this point of your career?
I just do it
You
and
plan it.
and say, look, I'm unavailable
Okay.
that time. And if they have to get somebody else, that's cool.
Right, so if you
but
miss
most
something,
of
you
the
miss
time
something.
people will move
Right.
things if they want me bad enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty cool.
It seems like you've been at that point for a long time, though.
Yeah, a lot of engineers say too long. Now. Time to get.
They just want a shot.
Yeah, right.
Well,
Exactly.
I mean, we're in an interesting time in our business, where people don't buy records anymore.
I know, it's so sad.
And it is sad. And, for those of us who are so passionate about making music, we're not stopping. We're still making records
Right.
or singles. Or,
Yeah.
But, what's your thoughts on the current state of the music business and the entertainment business, and also, the struggle? There's so many people, yourself included, that I'm not suggesting you're struggling, but I would imagine you could be working more.
Yeah, I think all of us. You
Yeah.
know, I just talked to Ed Cherney and Elliot China
Right.
and Nico Bolas. We all could use more work.
Right.
It's the sad part of it is that you don't get musicians working together as much as you used to.
Right.
I mean, there are records now made with the drummers in LA, the bass players in San Diego, the guitar players up in Seattle,
Right.
the saxophone players in Vegas, and musicians don't play off one another that way. And when you see everybody in the studio together, and the guitar player hears something the bass player
Right.
did, and that triggers something for him, and he does something.
Instantly.
And then the bass player heard what he did, and that triggers something in
Right.
him.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of, you see this thing opening up, and
Yeah.
people playing off one another.
Yeah.
And you just don't, I mean, we have it, but not near what it
Right.
used to be. And it's so sad to see that.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the great studios closing up because then so many people are doing vocals in their home or
Right.
guitar parts in their home.
Yeah.
And that was work that was always done in studios,
Yeah.
and now it's gone.
Which was, we've been, as a musician and, player, I've been forced, my hand was forced also to have to learn how to engineer, which it hasn't hurt me to learn more
Right,
about
right.
your art and your
Exactly.
craft. But I would always much rather have you record my guitar
Yeah.
than me record my guitar. But it's become expected when you deal with TV
Yeah.
shows or films.
Well, budgets are
Right.
so small.
Yeah.
The other thing that really bothers me, when I was a kid, I knew every musician on the band.
Right.
I mean, because there were credits.
Mm-hmm.
And you read the credits, and sometimes the engineer's name
Yeah.
was there,
Right.
and the studio, and
Right.
even sometimes in some of the iconic jazz records, the microphones that were used and setups
Yeah.
and things. That's gone.
We all
Just
devoured that
gone.
information.
It's yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's. I could name the whole Woody Herman band. At
Right.
one point.
Yeah. That made my goal was to be one of those guys on the back of the record, not on the front.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing I would say to people is that, look, this is an artist's record,
Right.
and the artist's name goes on the front.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, your name goes on the back.
Mm-hmm.
So just remember that. You're working for the artist. Your job is to get the best you can for the artist.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. That's what we do.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. We're getting towards the end of our conversation. I want to ask you a few things. One, since this show is called Making It, what does making it mean to you, both personally and also professionally?
Oh, wow. Well, making it is having a career that you're happy with, and that you have respect of your peers, and of course being in demand.
Mm-hmm.
That certainly is. Personally, making it is trying to be kind to, be kind to all living things is one of the things that I say all the time. I mean, to treat people kindly, and there are people that maybe you don't really like, but it's easy to stay away from that.
Right.
I don't know. I think in a future world, maybe we all get along and are able to work together on things.
Mm-hmm.
It's just too much. You see too many children starving.
Mm-hmm.
You see too many people being killed. You see too many people being thrown out of their homes. We don't need this.
Right.
This is not what it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to do what I can,
Mm-hmm.
what little bit I can do to help. But we all need to help.
I agree. Can you share 3 tips for success that have driven your career? For anybody who's up and coming, what would you recommend?
Well, number one, love what you do.
Yes.
I mean, if you love what you do, you'll more than likely do it really, really well.
Mm-hmm.
For up and coming engineers and producers, get a good attorney. And I mean, it's
Yeah.
really important because
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many, maybe millions of dollars that I've been, because I didn't have a good attorney when I should have.
Okay.
And I signed, or I got verbal okays, yeah, you're going to get this, and
And didn't
that
happen.
never happened, and things like that. So try to document those
Mm-hmm.
things. And don't give up your family life
Right.
for your work,
Right. Keep the balance.
There's a healthy balance
Yeah.
somewhere there, and try to work that out.
Those are great tips. My final question to you is, at this point of your life, and you've lived quite an amazing life, and you still are living this beautiful life, with everything that you know to be true, what would you tell your younger self?
Wow. Don't give up. There's going to be setbacks. Just keep going. Just don't give up. Just keep doing what you love. And if you really love what you're doing, you'll do it well. Yeah, I guess that would be the most important thing. Just don't get down on yourself, and don't ever give up on yourself.
Right.
You never know when that break is going to happen, that one little thing that's going to set you off on the road to success.
Right.
Sometimes being in the right place at the right time. I've known engineers who the engineer didn't show up or got sick, and they wound up doing a record that became a big hit.
Right.
And the next thing you know, they were in demand.
Yep.
So yeah, don't give up.
Don't give up. On that note, I'm Terry Wollman. We're here at Capitol Studios in Studio B with Al Schmitt. This is our 100th episode, and I really appreciate all of you joining us every week, and especially today. Al, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm happy to be
The book,
number 100.
let's sell this out again.
Yeah.
It's Al Schmitt on the record, the magic behind the music.
Yeah,
You can-
Amazon.com.
Amazon's the best place to get it.
Easy.
And then Al will sign it for you if you run into
Yeah,
him.
absolutely. I get that all the time.
do?
At NAMM shows. And
Of course.
Guys are carrying the book out.
Right.
Yeah,
Al,
it's pretty cool.
thank you so much.
Oh,
it's
you're
great
welcome.
to see
Thank you. It was great. Thanks. I had a good time.
Thanks, everybody.
Cool.
See you next week.